I will draw your face.
Hey everyone, welcome back, and if you're new to Patreon, thank you so much for supporting my work. I do appreciate it. I'm getting back into the routine of uploading videos, so yeah, that's been interesting. It's been a journey, I'll say that. Well, today I'm just going to be talking about the last drawing that I did, which was a drawing of Queen Herby. It was, I think it was just about a week ago. I did post one real-time video, but this is just showing how I color skin with lighter skin tones, because before I did a tutorial on darker skin tones, so this I hope is useful. And if you have any questions, just ask me in the comment section down below, or if you have an idea for another tutorial, I am more than happy to hear it. Right, so I am using the Caran D'Ache and Prismacolor Premier pencils. Usually when I'm not working on too big of a piece, like something on really small paper, I won't, I don't want to use up the really good pencils, so I'll mix them. So that's what I did. As you can see, I started out with a dark brown color. I believe it was sepia. It's the Caran D'Ache. It's one of the darker brown shades from Caran D'Ache. I use that to kind of build the shadows for the corners of her eyes on her left side of the face. And for the shadows on her right side of the face, since it's facing the light, what I did was I started out with orange and French gray, and I went over that with a pale blue from Prismacolor. That helps make the skin a little bit more neutral tone instead of orange, so it tones down the orange a lot, but that way you can still tell that there's a shadow in the corner of her eye. After that, I went over it with, I believe it was either a beige pencil or a burnt ochre, and there's another burnt ochre pencil that I'm using, which is closer to peach. It doesn't really have, it's not really that yellow, it's more of a peach toned pencil. So that I went over the eyelid, and what I usually do is I will color in one direction, and then when I'm done filling in the area, I will switch directions and color vertically. That way I can get the area covered and it's more even. Now for her left side of the face, right under the eye, I started out with some of the French gray again to start the shadow and to make the peach tone a little bit darker. That way it sets the nose away from the other, it sets that part of the face back from the nose, because the nose is closer to the light, and the nose sort of has a defined line in this picture, so I had to be really careful with that. And I went over the skin with a blush pink because she doesn't really have orange skin, but it's not too pink. But I didn't want to just use peach. That's not a very good idea, just to use peach for an entire face. Normally I will use anything from cream to peach to blue, pink, red, orange, gray in faces, and that really helps you get a lot of more realistic skin, like more of a realistic skin tone. And here is where I'm using one of the, I think it's slate gray. I'm really not sure. No, that's lighter than slate gray. I was using that to start the shadows for the eyes. And here I am using the, color is that? It might be raw umber, one of the raw umbers, and I'm kind of using little circular motions to fill in the white space of the paper. Oh, and I almost forgot. So for this project, this is the first time using the 4-ply Bristol. It's 4-ply, it's Strathmore 4-ply plate Bristol. I have used the 2 and the 3 ply before, which they're good, really good papers to use, but I did want to try this paper and see how it works out. And I actually really like it. It's kind of expensive, but I think it's definitely worth the money. It is pretty forgiving when you make mistakes. You can definitely do erasing. It stands up well to an X-Acto knife, which I use very often. So most of this first part of the drawing, as you can see, is more of a value study, just to place everything on the paper before I do any serious color building. So here's where I'm placing the shadows for the fingers. Okay, so the one I'm using for this was the, I was using apricot, and then I was using the 30% French gray, which is probably the color I go through the most now besides black and white. It's very, very useful, especially for skin tones, so I really like that one. So here we are about an hour or so in. As you can see, I'm still using the French gray to do a value study on the shadows, and I'm using the blush pink to start building color on her right side of the face. This one definitely had some interesting shadows on it from her arm, her glasses, her nose, and her fingers. So I had to pay really close attention to where everything was placed to make sure that the lighting wasn't all wonky. And here I am coloring her right side of the face. You can see that I'm using vertical lines, which is what I normally do for the first few layers of pencil. That way it's even, and I go back over it later in a different direction of pencil, and it kind of eliminates the pencil lines, so it's very useful for blending. Alright, so we're about 2 hours into the piece now. I'm still using that peachy ochre color to build some values on her face. Sometimes I start out with the lighter values first, sometimes the darker ones. It just depends on what I feel like doing at that point in time, honestly. And I'm still working in vertical lines. I did start adding in pink to brighten up the skin a little bit when I go back in with the buff titanium and the white. So that helps out a lot when you need to add highlights to skin. So it still looks like skin, but you can still add in a light source later. And that because you have to use an X-Acto knife to scrape away a little bit. So you do have to have enough pencil layers on the paper in order to use an X-Acto knife. That way you're not cutting into the paper. You usually need, 3 or 4 good layers of pencil before you can start using an X-Acto knife, or at least one really heavy layer of pencil. So underneath the eye, I am using, I believe this is some kind of beige. So that's the side of the face that the light is shining on. So that's where I decided to add more of the yellow tones. Kind of, I guess sort of to make it look like the sun is shining on her, because I did change it a little bit from the actual picture reference. This one has a little bit warmer tones than the picture reference. The picture reference is more cool toned, and it's actually a lot lighter. So I did have to work with it a little bit to change it. So the 50% burnt ochre is what I use most often. I use sepia, and I don't know what the other brown is called for what I use for the corner of the mouth. It's pretty dark. And then I went over again with the burnt ochre and then the French gray. So it's just a lot of alternating between the same like 5 or 6 colors right now. This one I use I use one of the Prismacolor pencils because it's kind of like a muted pink. It's a very, very pale pink with a gray undertone, so that actually helped a lot. I used that pencil quite a bit in this piece because it wasn't super bright, but it also helped get some skin tone down without adding too much pink. I did start blending a little bit with the pale pink from Caran D'Ache. So what's important is that you work very slowly, and that way you make less mistakes. Just be patient with your work. It's very tedious, but at the same time, you should be happy with the way that your work comes out. All that hard work and all that time will pay off, I promise. And I believe I used that really pale pink under the eyelid. I don't know if you can see it right there, but the eyelid that's colored in right below, I used an X-Acto knife and I scraped it away a little bit and then went back in with the light pink. And that way it raises the eyelid, so you can tell that the eyelid kind of is like above. The eyelid is like above the skin. It's a different, it shows light on it. And here's where I start adding the white and the buff titanium for the nose. I use quite a bit of white for the nose from what I remember. And then I went over it with color instead of doing it the other way around. I don't think there's any shots of it in this video, but I did use a lot of blue and orange for shadows. I kind of skipped around a little bit during editing, so I'm not sure if there's any shots of that in here. The corner of where her eye is, the one that's colored in, I used blue and orange there. And then I used orange to start off coloring the eye, which brightens the blue. It makes it stand out more instead of just using blue by itself. And here's about, I'd say about 3 or 4 hours in. As you can see, I'm still building up the layers of color on that side of the face. I did have to color over where the earring was, and I went back later and used my battery eraser to erase it away again. This one is, I think this one is burnt ochre 10%. It's not beige, but it's close. It's a little bit more yellow, but I find it really useful. I'm still coloring in vertical lines, as you can tell, so you got to be careful with not switching directions in the middle of drawing. That way your pencil layers stay very even and it reduces lines and spots later on. And then I decided to start working on the forehead because sometimes that's like the last part of the face that I'll start coloring is the forehead. So I did color in vertical lines in the forehead, and then I went back with horizontal lines, and then I went over it again with kind of like diagonal lines. And here's where I'm building up color to set the nose apart from the face. Later, I know it's really dark, but later I went back and I added the white and the buff titanium. I just went over it with some dots. So that helps the nose set apart from the face, but let's see here, how should I say this? So that sets the nose apart from the face without actually having to put a line there showing where the nose like ends and where the cheek starts. That way everything kind of blends together. And then now I'm done with vertical lines for the most part, and I'm going in with diagonal lines to start tying everything together. I'm not sure why I kept coloring the corner of the eye there. I guess it was bothering me or something. Here we are with the light pink again and the white for the nose. For the nose, another thing that I do to set it apart from above the mouth is I'll use an X-Acto knife and go over it with white in that area. And here we are with the French gray again. The 30% French gray to set shadows under the mouth. I like this paper. It definitely takes a lot of time to fill up all the white space, so you just have to be patient. And you could still do this on 2-ply or 3-ply Bristol. You probably won't be able to get away with layering as much. Well, with the 3-ply, I think you could probably do the same amount of layering. The 2-ply is a little bit less forgiving. It's also not ideal when you're utilizing an X-Acto knife, so just keep that in mind. And then I start coloring in small circles in areas where I think there's probably enough color, and I can start tying it together. And then I did go and use the apricot again to add a little bit more warmth to the face, because for some reason I don't think there was enough color at that point. And I was still trying to fill up a lot of the white space. But I didn't want to use a lot more peach. I wanted to start bringing other colors in. And here's the circular motions again with the burnt ochre. And then I decided to go and add some pink back in to give her a little bit more skin color, and then I did start coloring the eyelid here with the pink as well. I'm not using a lot of pressure right now because it's too early to use a lot of pressure. It's not that dark of an area, so you have to be mindful of patchiness and, spots and unevenness and all of that. So I'm using really light pressure on the pencils on this side of the face because I want it to be like really, really uniform. And this is the point where I start adding the buff titanium to start brightening up the skin a little bit. And that way I can add a little bit more color on top of that, but that way it's still light. And I hope you guys enjoy this tutorial. There is going to be another one uploaded very shortly. So I hope you get to see that one and let me know what you think, or if you have any other tutorial ideas. Like I said, I do draw a subscriber every month. Well, I'm trying to get back in the habit of that. It's actually been a year. I am drawing a subscriber right now, but you can see the video description if you want to enter to be subscriber of the month for July. What I do is I draw a subscriber every month, and I draw them as some kind of themed character. It's a thing that I've really enjoyed doing the last couple of years, so I do that, and you'll be in a time-lapse video. I hope you guys enjoy this, and you have a great rest of your day.